All right, and this edition of Dan in the Kitchen, I'm going to teach how to make kombucha today. So this is definitely more than a single day process. So what I've got going on in my sink right now is just a big pot that's going to hold close to 3 gallons of water. I'm currently in 3-gallon batches of my kombucha. Boil as much water as you need for something like this. All right, so my pot's filled up. I like to do 3 cups of sugar for my 3 gallons. So for every gallon you make, 1 cup of sugar. In terms of tea, I like to use 10 tea bags per gallon, or if you're using loose leaf, 20 to 30 grams of loose leaf tea or 10 tea bags. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna put this on the stove. I'm gonna get it boiling. So now that I got my, my pot on, I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna put my 3 cups of sugar in there. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna put my 3 cups of sugar in. I need to go get more sugar. Anyways, you don't have to watch me do that. I ran out of sugar, I got some more in the cupboard. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in, but you get the gist. All right, so my water's boiling. So I've got my tea. I took my 30 tea bags and I put them into 1 big bag. The reason being is it's hard to control 30 tea bags. Goes right into the boiling pot of water, and you can see I've got a string attached to it. Just tying my string off so I don't lose it and so I can steep it every once in a while. So basically what I'm going to go ahead and do is just let this sit and cool for a couple hours. I'm going to show you a little trick that you can do to help your water cool a little bit faster as well. Let's talk about the life force of kombucha. That's what's in this jar, and what I mean by the life force, that's our SCOBY. Basically what a SCOBY is, it's an acronym. So it's a symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast, so SCOBY. So that's what your SCOBY is. And basically what's in it is starter. You don't actually need a SCOBY if you have starter. So something to just keep in mind there if you're looking for a SCOBY. If you want one for me, I guess you could send me a message. I have a lot. So basically what I'm going to go ahead and do, I need to clean my jar, so I'm going to take my SCOBY out, and what I need to do is wash my hands, because that's one thing is you want to make sure that when you're handling your SCOBY, you're as clean as you possibly can. And like I said, because I want to be as clean as I possibly can, I'm actually going to use paper towel to dry my hands off. Now, one thing about the smell, or I guess about kombucha is the smell. You're pretty much making vinegar tea. So it smells very acidic and very strong right now. So I'm just gonna go ahead and reach right in and pull my SCOBY out. Let it drain just a little bit. It's gonna go right onto that plate. So let's take a look at this thing. You can see it's extremely thick. I've actually had it, it's about 3-4 inches thick, and it's layered too. So if you're looking at this, you can see different layers of our SCOBY. So basically your newest layer is on top, and then the older layers are on the bottom, or is it reverse? I don't know, doesn't matter. But basically, this is the life force. It's kind of a weird little squishy thing. And this one's extremely big and round. It actually forms to your jar. So I have other SCOBY that are literally, this big, that are in this big of a jar. And then this is our starter. There's a lot of little just SCOBY bits floating around. That's okay, new one's being formed. I'm gonna go ahead and just pour this into my pouring vessel to see how much I actually have. And then basically what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to clean this, and we've got 3 cups of starter. You want 1 cup of starter per gallon. So I've got 3 gallons. Luckily I was right on the money. If for whatever reason I didn't have enough, I have backups. I actually have 3 different SCOBY units throughout my house, just in case one dies. I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna clean this. Once clean, I'm gonna put my SCOBY and my starter back in here. Once my tea is cooled, that's when you put the tea in. All right, so I'm done cleaning my jar, and I took some of my SCOBY off. To be quite honest, it was getting a little too large. The reason why you wouldn't necessarily want such a large SCOBY is it takes away volume and potentially additional kombucha you could be drinking. Now, one thing I do want to show you that I'm actually in the process of making is a SCOBY hotel. It needs to be fed, but basically what I'm doing is any extra SCOBY I have goes in here. And this is the smaller jar. So basically in this jar, I'm going to start a new SCOBY, and then once it's basically as high as I want it to go, I put it into this, and then you have a SCOBY hotel. I don't ever recommend throwing your SCOBY out. You can compost it, and I say it's really great for composting. You can use it for so many things. You can make a candy out of it. You can make a fruit leather. There's a number of different options. I mean, if you wanted to throw it out, you could. That is going to be a problem you are going to face is what are you going to do with all these scobies once they're made? Like I said, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take my thin layer of SCOBY that I just created. I'm going to go ahead and put it back into the jar. I know it looks really gross. That's okay. Pour in any of those extra juices. That's just starter. And you don't want it to sit here while your tea is still cooling. Make sure you leave your starter, I say, in with your SCOBY. That way you can keep it moist and hydrated. We'll be back to put some tea in it once it's cooled. I'll show you some tricks with it, like I said. All right, so I have my pot here, and say it's still a little warm, so what I did was I just put a little bit of ice in there, and what's gonna happen is that ice is just gonna cool it down, and then you're ready to stick it into your jars. So as soon as that ice melts, I'll go ahead and show you what I do from there. All right, so the tea's ready. I've got my 4 jars. This is the important one. You gotta make sure you get this one full because this is what's gonna actually make your booch. This is extra, meaning if this one dies, this one's gonna still be alive. This is my my SCOBY hotel, and then this is my 3rd backup. So I've got 2 backups. They're all in different places in case the main one dies. That's why this looks maybe a little bit more complicated. I also have my very unsophisticated siphon where I literally just, oop, that will happen. You might splash yourself right in the face. And then you just fill. So as these are going, to sort of give you an update on what happens next, after these are full, they're gonna go ahead and sit on the shelf. A lot of people will be like, make sure you label it. Honestly, I come back in 7 days and I start tasting. Because there's no magic number on how many days this is gonna take. Meaning it might take 7 days, it might take 3 days. It really just depends on where you're storing this in the weather. Right now, being in Chicago, it's April. This will honestly probably take about 2 weeks, but I'm gonna test it constantly until I get the flavor I like. Once I get that flavor, that's where the video picks back up. All right, so we're at the fermentation station. You got my jar of booch. You can see my my sourdough starter. I still got that going. I've got some seasonings back there. I don't actually have a lot going on in the fermentation station. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna taste my booch. It's been, I think, about 8 days since I made it. And this is when I first start tasting it, is about 8 days in. Basically what I'm tasting for is to see how acidic it is. It's actually still pretty sweet. I bet it's got another 2 days. This process of fermentation and it getting sour, let's see, it could take anywhere between 7 to 2 weeks. Don't mind the baby. It's the fun of these videos. So yeah, it still tastes pretty sweet, and honestly, a lot of it has to do with the weather. The warmer the weather, the quicker this thing's gonna ferment. I've had these things go in 4 days. I've had them take 2 weeks. So it really just depends on your personal taste preference. I think it's got about another 2 days, so I'll come back in about 2 days and try it again. All right, so let's go ahead and taste this. You can see there's a lot of bubbles up and through. That's a good sign. It's just basically our SCOBY eating the sugar and farting, to be quite honest. I'm sure it's more scientific than that, but let's go ahead, let's give it a taste. We're pretty close. We're definitely on a taste it every day. I just haven't done a video every single day because, tomorrow's definitely the day. It's perfect amount of acid, sweetness. I really like that. And again, it's just tasting it till you get to that point that you like. This can sit another day and be perfectly fine without it going over acidic. So, you know, test it every single day. If you're not quite there, wait another day. It's a waiting game at this point. All right, so today's the day. You could drink it straight out of this and get plenty of health benefits from it. But I prefer to have it basically bubble a little bit, you know, a little bit of carbonation. So a couple different things that I have here that aren't 100% required. I'll tell you what's required, what's not. First, I've got my siphon to basically siphon it into a smaller jar. Technically, neither of these things are necessary. You just need to pour basically your kombucha into, and say what I have here is a pouring container. I do think this is necessary. I also have a strainer, 100% necessary. I also have a funnel. I've got my juices. I'm doing two different flavors. I'm doing a pomegranate, which I've never done before, and a tart cherry. If you're doing multiple flavors, you are going to need some sort of tape. I just prefer masking, and a permanent marker. And again, if you're looking to bottle say you'll also need bottles. You need to get fermentation grade bottles. Don't get glass bottles from like Target or Walmart. They're not fermentation grade. Let's go ahead, let's go over, first step. Siphon off some kombucha into a smaller jar. And this is where I'm actually going to flavor it. I'm also going to strain it as well. You could do this later. I just think this is the easiest time to do it. Now I know you can't really see what's going on here, but it should still be there when I'm done, but it's foaming a lot, and that's a good sign. That means it's been fermenting. All right, so you can see how much foam I have. It actually almost looks like a beer. So this is the point where I'm gonna start adding my fruit juices. Now this is all taste preference, really when it comes down to this. And that's actually why I've got my pipette, which I've been using. You're probably gonna want one of those, they're pretty cheap. This is just a guess and test. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm just gonna pour that much juice. I have no idea how much I just poured in there. Like I said, this is all about your flavor preferences. So, when I was tasting it, I was looking for the flavors that I liked before I put in the juices, meaning I was looking for a good combination of sweet and sour. Now that we're adding fruit juice, we're adding a little bit of sweetness back in, so you want that tartness to help balance it out. So that's what I'm gonna go ahead and do. Just try it. Not bad. I think it needs a little bit more, so I'm just gonna put in a splash, and I'm not even gonna taste it because I know that's all it needed. Next steps, we're gonna go ahead, we're just gonna pour the juice into here, and we're gonna start filling our bottles. So it is gonna take me 2 times to get through it all. That's okay. This only, fills up so much. I estimated that I'm gonna use about 9 bottles. So you can see I got my funnel, and I'm just gonna start pouring. Now you need to make sure you leave yourself a little bit of head space. When we're looking here, you want about 1 inch from the neck of the bottle is usually where I go. So the reason why you don't wanna fill it all the way up is the glass jar literally could explode on you. And that's the same reason why you don't wanna use crappy decorative glass jars that have this flip top, because when we basically cap it up, we're essentially pressurizing the bottle. We're creating a bomb, is basically what we're doing. So you want to make sure that you've got a bottle that can withstand the pressure that you're creating by this fermentation. So what we're doing is a second fermentation. What I mean by that is the first fermentation is basically in this big jar here, and then the second fermentation is going to be inside the bottle. So this second fermentation is creating that carbonation we want. So basically what I just did was look to see if all the bottles are pretty even. I've got a hint left in there, and basically what I'm going to go ahead and do with this hint is I've got a plastic bottle here. I'll tell you what that's for in a little while. I'm going to go ahead and just pour that in there. I'm just going to cap them all up so you can sort of see. And it's just, your standard flip top, so you put it in and flip it down. So I'm going to go ahead and get all these done, and here's where the fun begins. The hardest part of the whole process is how long is it going to take to get carbonation on it without it getting overly sour. It's honestly just a guess and test when going along, and that's actually where this is going to come in handy. So, like I said, it was just a little drop. I'm going to make sure on my next one I can fill it up a little bit. And basically what I'm going to use the bottle for is to determine how much carbonation is actually inside my glass jars as I'm going along. When the bottle starts to get really tight, meaning, like right now, you can squish it. When it doesn't squish, that usually means it's done. So the last thing that you're going to go ahead and do is you're going to give it a name and you're going to date it. So this is where your masking tape comes in handy. Today is the 5th, Cinco de Mayo. So I'm going to write 5-5, and let's call it Palm Delight, because that's pomegranate juice, so we're going Palm Delight. To be quite honest, the name doesn't really matter. It's just something that I find fun to do, and just so you can sort of see as well. Again, the date and Palm Delight. This is ready. You could drink it like this, like I said, but I want a little bit of carbonation on it, so we'll go from there. All right, just finished up my last bottle. I called this batch Dan's TC for tart cherry. So one thing that I do want to go ahead and go over real quick, make sure you don't use all this. You need some for the next time you make booch. You know, I probably left about 3 cups in there. I mean, you only need a cup to actually make kombucha. And this, I basically took a little bit of this and say threw a little bit of tart cherry and pomegranate juice. And again, you can squish this right now. In like 3 days, you won't be able to. And that's actually gonna be a good indicator of whether or not it's ready or not. All right, so it's been about a week, and you can see when I try to squeeze this, it's extremely firm. That means there's a lot of pressure that's built up in here. I might have let this go 1 day too many. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do, you know, something else you can see is, you know, how many bubbles are forming, you know, along the edge here. But let's go ahead, Yep, so definitely done. You can see how it bubbled up like that. And say, to be quite honest, something tells me that there's gonna be too much pressure on these guys. I'm gonna go ahead, just give it a taste. Pretty good, it's not over fermented, that's for sure. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna basically put all these in the refrigerator. That's gonna stop the fermentation process. We'll go ahead and drink one maybe tomorrow. All right, so this is the test. I say I've got my booch. You shake it up just a little bit. I'm gonna open it up over the sink just in case it explodes. You'll know what happens when it explodes. So here we go. All right, didn't explode on me. Awesome amount of carbonation. You can see it all popping up. So you're gonna go ahead, just pour a little in the final taste. So this is the tart cherry. Again, the cherry. What's kind of nice about this is the acidity from the booch. I say, honestly, this is one of the better booches I've made in a while. Really pleased with this. That's how you make kombucha.